Hi everyone, and welcome to this recording about tree activation in AEM as a cloud service. So recently we needed to replicate a large number of branches from author to publish because we were migrating content from a different environment into AEM as a cloud service. And during this replication, we wanted to use tree activation rather than just installing the package manually and separately into author and publish, because by using actual replication, we would get consistent publication statuses on the pages that we're replicating. So we wanted to actually be able to see over here that the page was indeed published and how long ago the page was published. So I'm going to be demoing this using the weekend site. I'm going to make some manual changes over some pages, and we'll see how we can activate them using a tree replication format in AEM as Cloud Service. When we first had this requirement to replicate multiple branches all at once, I initially just thought I would just use the tree activation user interface, which for those of you that remember, it was found in the tools section in AMS or in on-prem AEM. We would just open this up, choose a tree that we wanted to replicate, and we would just be able to go ahead and do a dry run and then activate the whole thing. In AEM as a cloud service, this entire interface has been removed. So we can't do that anymore. So what we're actually supposed to do is use workflows. So if we open up the workflows module, you'll see that one of the workflows that exist is called publish content tree. And this is the workflow that we could use, but in fact, this one's not editable. So what Adobe recommends is either copying this one and pasting it and then modifying it to suit your needs, or creating it from scratch. I tried copying and pasting it, and the resulting workflow is also not editable. So not really sure what's happening there. So I just went ahead and created one from scratch, and it's pretty simple to do. So this is the one that I created. It's just a simple workflow step. So you just include the process step from the side there, and then when it's in your workflow, you can give it a name. I just called it activate content tree, and then really there's a couple parameters that you'll want to put in the process tab. So the first of which is you need to select that the process that we're invoking here is the publish content tree. So that's number one. And then there's a number of parameters that we can include as arguments over here. So the ones that I'm including are the include children, which is a Boolean, which will tell us if we want to include the children of the node that we're trying to activate. And I'm sure this is usually going to be true because this is the purpose of this workflow, is to activate the entire branch. So include children, true or false. And then agent ID, this is if we want to push this to the publish layer or the preview layer. So this can take two different values, publish or preview. So I'm going to send this to the publish layer. And so that's the value that I'm using. There's a couple other ones we can include an enable version value here. And this is whether or not we want to create a version after our publication. So why not? Let's give it a go. And then we can also add some filters, which can be either only activated. So we want to only replicate activated pages that have already been approved, or only modified. So in our case, only modified makes sense because I'm going to be manually making some changes and then replicate them. If we have no filter, it'll just push everything in there. So we've got that. And then lastly, there's a replicate as participant value, which is also going to be a Boolean. And if you make this true, then it's going to use the user account of the user that's currently logged in to perform the replication. So there's going to be possibly permissions that user has that may restrict him as to what content they're actually allowed to replicate. So if you're building this workflow for an entire team to use, this might be a good idea to make sure that there isn't anyone on that team that is using this to replicate content they don't actually have access to replicate. So I'll leave this as true. It won't be a big deal for me because I'm logged in with an administrator. I've got permission to replicate everything, so this is just an example. So we're going to click done now that we have all of our arguments in place. And let's just go ahead and make a couple quick changes. So I've got the same pages open in both author and publish, and I'm just going to change the images in here. So we've got something about camping, so let's just change that image here. And then we've got something about ski touring Mont Blanc, which sounds fantastic. I'd love to do that sometime. We'll pull this image in here, and then we're gonna return to the models section. We've still got this model selected, and I'm gonna invoke it. So when we invoke it, it's gonna prompt us to choose the payload. So what is the root page that we're invoking this on? And this is gonna happen on the adventures section. And so I'll select that, and I'll give this a title. It's not mandatory, you don't have to, but I'm gonna call it Activate Adventures. And I'm gonna run this. So this is now gonna go, and while it's happening, it's probably already done, but I wanna first take a look at, number one, the instances. So the fact that there are no instances means that this workflow started and finished right away. If this was still running, it probably imply that the amount of content that is being replicated is large, and therefore it's still going. So we'll probably actually see it in the archive. So there we go. We can see the Activate Adventures workflow that we run in the list of archives. So these are the workflows that have successfully completed, which is great news for us. Another way to see that our workflow has completed is in the deployment section. So over here we have distribution, and we were pushing to the publish layer. So I'm going to open this one up. You can see that everything is green, which means that everything is running well. And this is kind of to be expected. There isn't really any configuration that you have to do on your agents for replication in AEM as a cloud service. It's all done for you. And the reason that this is done differently than it was before is because the whole replication module has changed in AEM as a cloud service. So previously we used replication agents that would push content directly from the author to the publisher. Now or AEM as a cloud service rather, has changed to use Sling distribution to push content from author to publisher, or from a source to a target node of any sort. Sling distribution runs outside of AEM's runtime. So they did it to actually reduce the load on the servers, which I think is a great idea. So this is why we can replicate large amounts of content without a big load added to the system. Sling distribution runs on Adobe's, so outside of AEM's runtime, it runs on Adobe I/O, which is a gateway of APIs and SDKs that Adobe has to integrate its products. So you'll be using it to integrate Campaign, for example, or Target or Analytics. So the replication has also been moved there, and as a result, this is the status and the queues that you'll see. And the great thing is, like I said, there's no configuration needed when you're connecting authors and publishers. It happens automatically. And even as publishers or authors are added or removed, as different amounts of load are having to be adhered to, all this connection is happening automatically in the back end. So you never have to worry about it. Anyway, we can look at our logs, and this is where we can get a sense of whether or not our publication request succeeded. So here we can see that a request was accepted with distribution package. So this is where we started, and you can see that it added some paths over here. These are all the paths that we're going to get replicated. So I'm not really sure exactly where this array ends, but if we're actually trying to debug it, we can find it. So it tells you all the different packages, all the different assets that were going to be replicated as a result of this request, and they all happen together. So with Sling distribution, it's all or nothing, which is really good because, as you can see, they also take care to replicate the images that are part of all these pages. So it's really important that if one of the images, for example, doesn't succeed in replication, the whole thing stops so that we don't end up with a broken image on the publish side. So if that were to happen, we could check out the logs, see what's going on, why it's broken, and then deal with the situation. So back into the site admin now, we can look at the pages that we just activated, which are the ones sitting under adventures. And we can see that the ones that we were working with, that we had just touched, Ski Touring Mont Blanc and Riverside Camping, both have a published update of a minute ago. And here's Riverside also a minute ago, whereas all the other ones have been published longer ago. And the reason they weren't published, if you recall, is that in our workflow model, we set the parameter that we only want modified pages to go through. So these ones were published in my previous session that I had just done prior to this recording, whereas these ones were published just now when we went through our actual workflow during our activation model. And of course, if we go to each one of these pages in Publish and refresh them, we will of course get the updated image in both of them after the successful workflow of the activation tree. Thank you very much.